It's 10:35 and I'd like to reconvene council meeting of March the 12th. We had a motion to come out of closed at 10:29 a.m. by Councillor Chamzik. The count was 9-0, and then we had a 5-minute recess. The next item of business on our agenda is item number 8.2, calendars. Shall we start with Councillor Chamzik?
Hi there. Just some calendar changes. Tomorrow will be the Boyle Library as it changed. And then Thursday will be the town library. Also, Sergeant Surpese is hosting his town halls on the 26th in Boyle, 27th in Wandering River, and the 28th in Grassland. And other than that, for April, the 16th for Boyle Library and the 18th for town.
Do you want to go through those again? I wasn't keeping up with you, Councillor. You're a little
Okay,
fast.
so tomorrow is Boyle Library.
Okay.
The 14th town. On the 26th, the town RCMP Town Hall in Boyle, 27th in Wandering River, the 28th in Grassland. It's all 6 p.m. And then in April, the 16th will be Boyle Library and the 18th Town Library.
Councillor
Yes.
Holland.
For the town hall, are they offering a virtual? Do you know if they're offering a virtual
I
opportunity?
do not believe so.
Okay, thank you.
That's it? Let's go from you, move to Councillor Hall, and we'll work around.
Okay, thank you. April the 11th, community transportation at 9 a.m. April the 12th, the ALTSC, Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee MOU meeting. April 19th, the Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee regular meeting.
Okay. Councillor Mins, do you have any to add, take off? Okay. Councillor Cromwell.
Nothing to add, but the county library board on the 4th of March was canceled.
Councillor Gerlach. Nothing to add. The FCSS one and Blue Heron are on there correct? They're on there correctly. Okay, Councillor Captain.
Blue Red was canceled for this Thursday. And I just got an email today saying it's rebooked for April 11th. 10:30 a.m.
At 10:30.
I'm sorry, what one was that?
Athabasca Regional Economic Development
Oh, A-Red?
is, yep, April 11th at 10:30. And the meeting of that same committee on the 14th of March was canceled.
Yeah.
Okay, any others?
I gotta go.
Okay, Councillor Anderson. Nothing. Councillor Waller. I feel like we just did these. That's what, okay. Any further discussion on calendars? Seeing none, Councillor Cromwell has made a motion to adopt the calendars as amended. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none on the question of the adoption of the motion to adopt the calendars as amended, all those in favor? Opposed? We're in favor, 9-0, and the motion is adopted. Sorry, go ahead.
The calendars, is it our turn to host joint or tri-council? And should we be booking that?
We do the fall.
Oh, okay, I thought it was us next. It was town next. Okay, thank you.
I think there was some jokes about that at the meeting.
Oh,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
one thing I should have added, we did receive feedback from the Parliamentary Secretary of Health that it's got some openings on Monday, March 18th in the morning. So 8:30 to 1. That's kind of before RMA starts, but on that Monday, he's got openings.
I think most of the people that are there are booked into EOEP courses. Would council, what's your wish? Do you want to, would you rather just send a letter to him and the minister?
8:30 to 1. He
Wouldn't
did
allow-
say he might be available 3 to 6:30, but he might get pulled away to go for a vote in assembly. So he's actually in session. So
3 to 6:30 range. I mean, the late one is probably better, but I would be just as personally happy with the letter. Council? So the consensus is we'll work through a letter. Would someone like to make a motion to, or,
Can we see if he is available?
oh, throw your microphone.
If he is available for the evening, if we can book something, if he gets canceled, whatever. Otherwise, we send a letter.
Okay,
he said he may take some meetings from 3 to 6:30. That day, however, he will have to be available to run for a vote in the assembly.
Yeah,
So if you would like to schedule something and then there's some risk of it being canceled.
yeah, that's fine.
then we could go to the gallery and watch the vote. That would be exciting, but
So yeah, can we book some, can I make a motion to book a meeting between 3 and 6 PM on
Probably.
Monday?
between 4:30 and 6.
Can we, can I make a motion to book a meeting with him, between, in the evening? Well, whatever.
Councillor Wallach is making a motion to ask for a meeting with the Parliamentary Secretary for Rural Health sometime after 4:30 on Monday.
After
Any further discussion? Seeing none on the question of the adoption of the motion to ask for a meeting after 4:30 Monday, all those in favor? Motion is adopted. I suppose we should make sure that it clarifies Monday, the 18th. But other questions? We're 10. Moving on, 10.1G, Councillor Holland, you have, I highlighted your name, you have a report.
Thank you. I'll just give quite a high level report, being that we have a delegation coming in. Just a report on the two Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee meetings that were held March 1st and March 8th. The one on March 1st was to discuss the memorandum of understanding and to get a draft created, which was done. That was held at Sturgeon County. We had several councillors as well as CAOs that represented the municipalities, as well as other representatives from those municipalities attend. The MOU was created, sent out to a draft was created, sent out to the CAOs on March 6th so that they had time to do a review and recommendations that they thought might be appropriate. And then the next meeting to go over that will be April 12th. The Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee meeting, the regular meeting, was on March 8th in TrailNet. It was a hybrid meeting, so we were able to attend virtually. Both Member Chamzik and I attended both of these meetings. This one in person, one via Zoom. There's quite a bit of conversation that took place. We went through the discussion on how to best handle the action item list that is aging. So that will be coming together and being updated very shortly. The MOU draft, of course, was discussed, and the next steps that we just talked about there. We talked about maintenance agreements that we were looking at, and we'll be coming back together to figure out what's the best way to handle that situation, as well as other management plans. Just signage was discussed as well. That's throughout the trail. So there's different things that are happening there with regards to bridge signs, right on through to all sign needs. So everything from enter at your own risk, et cetera, et cetera. So all of those are going to be looked at throughout the season to make sure that those things are up to date. We discussed the active living grant that will be discussed this morning, I would assume, with our delegation, so I won't go too far into that. We mentioned the TCT Spring 2024 Trail Care Grant. That extension was given for the deadline there to March 7th. Um. And I think I'll leave it at that. The other thing, of course, as always, is constantly updating for the master plan that we're talking about. That is going to be the master plan itself not redone, but updated from 2010 to 2010. So an additional, I'm thinking it's called an addendum or something along those lines. Did I miss anything? Got it pretty, yeah, there's quite a bit of discussion, but if anybody has any questions on that, please don't hesitate to ask.
Counselor Anderson.
Thank you. You mentioned an MOU meeting. Is that an existing agreement that's being updated or is that a new document that's
A
being generated?
brand new document. So it's a municipal memorandum of understanding between all municipalities. So it's a high level and it will be basically using the master plan as a guide, but it's all municipalities will be engaging in that MOU.
Okay.
No other questions? Okay. Thank you for that report. The next item, we have Councillor Chamzak speaking to 10.1S County Library Board.
Unfortunately, we didn't make quorum. Our annual reports are in and submitted. Working on policies, everything will be hopefully ready to, for approval in May. And that's about it for now for county library update.
You guys have been doing a major overhaul of policies, it seems like.
Indeed. Yes, it has been. And it's been a wonderful wonderful learning curve and through our Northern Lights, being able to utilize some of those services there as well has been an extreme amount of help. Do you want me to go right into FCSS?
Unless there's questions on the library, seeing that there's none, 10.1T.
Yesterday, we had our meeting. We're getting ready for the FCSSAA conference, spring conference, and in May, they're planning for the one in November. Kim Lewis did her presentation on programming for being the seniors advocate, including programs with federal programs, provincial programs, you know, stuff like subsidized housing, the Alberta Senior Benefit. And in case you guys don't know, Kim is the community dementia ambassador for the region as well. She also runs a multitude of programs for caregivers, elder abuse workshops, and facilitates her senior symposium in the town and village. And through the New Horizon Seniors Program grant through the town, we were also able to help fund the emergency preparedness event this Friday. And I just thought I would showcase some of the fine work that FCSS does. Thank you.
It would be appropriate to take an order to receive the updates from committees for information. Councillor Minns has moved. Any further discussion? Seeing none on the question of the adoption of the motion to receive those reports. All those in favor? The count of opposed? Count is 9-0 and the motion is adopted. Okay, we have 10 minutes before our delegation. We have 4 items left on the agenda, 4.3, 4.4, and the items in number 11. CO Beck, is the items under, you have the item under 11.1, can we handle that in 10 minutes? Or would you recommend we just postpone these till after?
I recommend we just postpone them and deal with them together instead of splitting them up.
Perfect.
Mr. Chairman.
Unless there's objection with council, shall we recess until be ready to roll at 11 o'clock for the trails, folks? The next delegation is 11 and we've covered everything else in the agenda except 4.3 and 4.4. Morning. It is 11 o'clock and I'd like to reconvene the March 12th meeting of Athabasca County Council. To begin, I'd like to welcome our delegations from the trails groups, the Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee and the Athabasca Recreational Trails Association. Thank you for joining us. There's some water on the table and normally our practice is to introduce council. And then once that's finished, we work our way around and the floor comes to you and you can take over and share your information. On your right, we have our CAO, Mr. Bob Beck, Recording Secretary, Ms. Blair, Communications Coordinator, Mr. Schenkelberg, and then Councilor Mintz.
Morning, Rob Mintz. How you doing? Good. Baptist Lake Island Lake area.
Good morning and welcome, and thank you so much for being here. Tracy Holland, as we know, Division 5, east of Athabasca, that way.
Good morning, Kelly Janzik, Division 7, Grassland, Atmore, Prospect areas.
Good morning, Camille Wallace, Division 9, north of the river.
Brian Hall, elected in Division 4.
Ashton Anderson, I reside in Division 3, which is the Boyle area.
Hello, Natasha Kaptanik, Division 2, Collington, Minoka, New Pine Creek.
Good morning, Joe Gerlach, Division 1, which is the Rochester Prairieville area in the south part of the county.
And good morning, Gary Cromwell, far north, Brainerd, Blue Jay, Wandering River area. Thank you for being here today.
And so again, just make sure your microphones are on and we've saved some time for questions at the end. So the floor is yours.
My name is Lynn Jewell, and I'm the president of the Athabasca Recreational Trails Association.
And I'm Linda Strong Watson, Executive Director of Alberta TrailNet Society. So I would like to take a few minutes just by way of introducing not only myself, but Lynn and her group in terms of our how we fit into the trail picture here in Athabasca and area. And for myself, Alberta TrailNet Society is Alberta's provincial trail council. So we work with communities throughout the province on their trail development projects. This obviously was one of our key initiatives. And we also represent and are responsible for implementing the Trans-Canada Trail in Alberta. So again, the Athabasca Landing Trail is part of the Trans-Canada Trail picture. And it's a project that we've been working on for approximately 20 years now. And then I'll let you talk a little bit, maybe for a moment, about your group and your area of responsibility.
Okay, my group that I belong to started quite some time ago. So I came in about halfway. I think I started in about 2013. I've been here on it for about 10 years. So most of what was developed on the Athabasca Landing Trail was done a little bit before my time. A good section of trail was built from Collington. Well, we call it the Workman property, but that's not just how we should refer to it. But that trailhead right through to the old Collington Highway, then it crosses the highway there and then comes into Athabasca and it follows on Dale McQuaig's land and then onto the rail bed and then into the town. So that's the biggest development that we've done. And Alberta TrailNet spearheaded 2 bridges being put in Collington, one by Wilfongs. Then a trail was built from there to one of the main streets in Collington. And then another walking bridge was built by, you have to follow my fingers, okay? By Barb LaChance's property. And we fenced that off for Barb and a walking bridge was put in there. That's the biggest portion of the trails that we have worked on. Yeah, that I am aware of. There's other projects in mind, but we haven't started on them.
We understand that council likely has a number of questions that they have for us. And I have provided a bunch of materials, which I think may have been distributed to council. TrailNet first got more involved with the Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee, which Athabasca County has also been involved with for a number of years. At the request of the the not-for-profit trail organizations in this area who were, and this is all the way from Edmonton, all the way to Athabasca, they were struggling in terms of being able to take forward Trans-Canada Trail projects. And they weren't working together, they were just individual groups here and there that were working towards one particular goal. They came to us and asked us if we would assist in bringing together you know, a group of the affected municipalities as well as the trail groups to try and come up with a plan and work together towards actually implementing and developing the historic Athabasca Landing Trail. So ever since that time, we did reach out to the municipalities, to the counties, to town of Athabasca, to Fort Saskatchewan, and to request if they would be interested in forming a steering committee and working with all of us. And we did get support for that. And we've been moving forward ever since that time, and it kind of goes forward in fits and starts depending on the availability of funding. And TrailNet has been the primary agency in sourcing provincial and federal grant funding for our projects along the Athabasca Landing Trail. We work and we report to Government of Alberta, and specifically to the Minister of, at this time, Tourism. The name changes all the time. We get a certain amount of operating funding from that ministry, and we work with them closely on our trail development projects. And we closely follow provincial guidelines in terms of trail standards and, you know, some of the other information and materials that we've worked with them to put together to guide not only our, but trail development across the province. I sent you a couple of pieces of information. One was a bit of a report on the external funding contributions to the Athabasca Landing Trail over the years. And so this one just kind of captures a bit of a picture of the amount of funding that's gone into each of the municipalities along the Athabasca Landing Trail over the years. So, and I've actually, in this particular case, I've listed a few of the projects. Town of Athabasca, we've obviously done some bridge engineering and building here, and that total is 582,000 more or less. In Athabasca County, again, we've done a number of bridges. We've done some trail development from Athabasca to Collington, and obviously we've done another bridge up in the North Collington, and a trail that goes from that bridge over to the east side of Collington. And so the total spent to date, just from these particular grants for these projects, is 1,288,000 essentially. Westlock County, a total of 279,590. Sturgeon County, we've spent, and this is with the recent development of the Woodridge Trail included, which will be opening likely this June, $2,221,961. So a significant amount of funds have been raised, and we're obviously grateful to the funders who've been providing that funding. And we are continuing in that, in the pursuit of federal funding dollars, especially most recently, we received a grant for $50,000 for trail planning and design and public consultation for the historic section of trail between Meenook and Perryville. So that's a project that we are planning to take forward this spring, and our hope is that we will be working closely with Athabasca County on that project. The other thing I wanted to just mention, because I know that there's been some questions with regards to something that we call the Athabasca Landing Trail Municipal Grant Fund. And so those funds are being held by Alberta TrailNet at present, and have been since we first started to gather those funds together. The municipalities have been paying $5,000 a year in support of the work of the steering committee for a number of years now. And those funds are really intended to support the work of the steering committee, and that's our work on on applying for grants, on things like in terms of my, there is no charge against those funds for any of Alberta TrailNet's time. We do, however, if we're up on a project, for instance, somewhere and we're doing a trail inspection on a project that's underway, we will charge our mileage and possibly a meal to that grant. But apart from that, those are minor amounts of funds. But I did want to report that I have received, I haven't yet distributed this, but from our accountant, she's indicating that at present, there is approximately $98,000 of money that's been built up in that fund. And I've also provided you with a copy of projected upcoming costs and potential expenses against those funds. And those funds, and this would be likely a maximum for the upcoming year, 24-25 would be approximately 32,000. So that's just sort of a financial picture of where we're at, and I would welcome any questions from council about any of this information. And we're here to to talk about it and answer those questions, obviously. I think also one of my understanding is that one of council's questions are what are our asks or hopes in terms of our time with you today. And first of all, I want to thank the county for all the support it's provided over the years and for the participation of council members on the Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee. It's been extremely important to the success of our projects. And I also would very much like to recognize Tracy and her support and leadership in terms of some of the discussions that are happening at present with regards to potential memorandums of understanding and getting some of the other sort of critical foundational information together that kind of can inform our way going forward. And I think one of our key requests, obviously, is for continued support and involvement from Athabasca County on the Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee. We would also like to request its continued financial support to the work of the steering committee, which to date, I mean, we've been requesting $5,000 each year in terms of supporting that work. And again, that includes for things like the steering committee being able to travel to and help oversee projects and the areas where we're doing or proposing to do trail development. And for the expenses of steering committee meetings, which are relatively minor, they really involve a luncheon, maybe some coffee, but Alberta TrailNet, we're in a government building, the Percy Page building in Edmonton. And we don't pay any meeting room rental or anything like that, and our staff costs are free. So we're not incurring any cost for those kind of things. But at any rate, I also provided a copy of a PowerPoint presentation, which I didn't think we had time to sort of go through in detail today, but I did want to take your attention to the second page of that, if you have those copies with you. And I would look forward sometime to actually doing a full presentation to council about this whole thing, but I wanted to particularly mention the projects, that are highlighted in yellow, and those ones that are encased in a little blue box on here, because these are our areas of focus over the coming years. One of them is the Rochester Staging Area and Trail. There's a small viewing lake area at Tawatna Lake, a wildlife viewing area that we'd like to do a bit of a trail connection to that viewing area. As I mentioned, the Perryvale to Minook Trail is one of our focal areas coming up immediately this spring and summer. Associated with that is a staging area at Minook, and council and staff will, I think, remember that we had initially proposed a staging area at the north end of the historic trail. And staff were concerned with regards to the safety of public access from where we were proposing that a small parking area be placed and the connection to the trail. And so we will be coming back to council with a request that we instead locate a small, maybe 3 or 4 vehicle parking area and place for a signage kiosk at the south end of that historic section of trail. So that's what is referred to in terms of the Minuk Trail staging area. And this one does not so much apply to the county, but it does imply a connection to the county trail. And that's the South Athabasca Bridge. We call it either the South MRM or George's Bridge, which is requiring replacement. That is a significant project, and we haven't yet identified the funding that's going to be required to replace that bridge. So I wanted to give Lynn a bit of a moment also, because I think there may be other questions with regards to costs to maintain the trail. And Athabasca Recreational Trails Association has obviously been at the local level the key entity that's been responsible for a lot of the maintenance work on the trail. And Lynn, do you want to just speak for a few minutes about that?
Well, I must admit, we haven't spent an awful lot recently on the trail. It has kind of held its own. We've had to go in and do a few repairs, and we've just done that. Like, we haven't charged our committee anything to do that. We've gone in with our skid steer or our tractor and leveled stuff off, and we've placed signs up, and we've placed the initial cement blocks that are on the Wilfong Trail. And we did all of that. Like, our group was not charged that by us. That was volunteers. Right now, we know that there needs to be some maintenance on the trail because unfortunately there's a bridge out on the road and some people are accessing that trail with their vehicles. And so we do have access now. We've got some more cement blocks that we'll be able to get, I think, on Thursday, that we're going to block off the north and the south end of that part of the trail, like from the road up just before the bridge that's out on the old Collington Highway. So we'll block it off because it's still frozen. So there's nothing, I mean, they're not damaged anything more yet, but they will be. So we will be blocking that off. And we actually have a donation from Inland Cement for their reject Lego blocks, which are just fine for what we need. We don't need pretty ones. Rejects are fine. So we're going to be doing that. But in the past, we've asked for a trail maintenance grant from Trans-Canada Trail. I haven't this last year, the year before, because the county has gotten that trail maintenance grant of $1,200. And I think last year it might have been $1,500. $1,000. Okay, $1,000, sorry. It was $1,200 maybe I'd got at one time. And so we, there again, we went out with the county councillors and some other volunteers and did some trail cleanup. But Collington itself really helps on this trail. There's somebody in the Collington area that mows the grass from the bridge to the main bridge there, but closer to the trailhead to the street in Collington. I have no idea who it is. And I've actually gone around and asked those people who it was, still have no idea, or nobody wants to own up to it. But they do a terrific job. So Collington itself is really helping with this, the village of Collington. And we did have more work to do around the walking bridge by Barb Lachance's. But now, because of the vehicle access that was on the trail from Workman's to that road, and I don't know the number of it, we need a little bit of gravel on that now because they have pounded out. We had a material down and then a honeycomb product on top of it, and we filled it with sand, and they have pushed it out. So it needs to be, so we need about 3 or 4 loads of gravel on that right now to bring that up to that. It probably will be just fine for quite some time again. And then a little bit of gravel on the walking trail from the bridge, the Wilfong Bridge, let's say, that goes up the hill a little bit, just because it washes there. Because when we put that trail in there, we had to have it 6 inches deep. We put fabric in there and 6 inches of gravel on that. And then in a couple of places, you can see where you can see a little bit of fabric now. And it's just from the downhill slope washing the stuff out, you know, so we need another load of gravel on that. So that's the only expense at the moment, that to upgrade what we've already done, to upkeep what we've already done. That's what needs to be done right now. But in the terms of money, when we have spent money there, and it's probably our fault, we didn't necessarily say this is for the Athabasca Landing Trail, as opposed to we also work on the Peace River Trail. And so our expenses are kind of lumped together. So I don't, but I know that the Athabasca Landing Trail, we actually haven't spent a lot of money on it in the last few years. $500 to $1,000 a year, maybe $500 a year. Yeah. To do what we've done so far, to keep up that part of the trail. That's about all we've done. Yeah.
So I think just picking up where Lynn left off, you know, much of the costs when it comes to trail maintenance are relatively low. And a lot of that is because of volunteer involvement. But where we have gotten into it in a few areas, obviously, is for instance, a non-engineered bridge, which the one we refer to as George's Bridge, or the South MRM Bridge, which is a bridge which has to be pulled out and which is going to have to be replaced with a proper engineered bridge for that location. All the other bridges have been engineered, and one of our costs, which is going to come up, you know, every 4 or 5 years, is going to be for an engineering inspection on those bridges. It's one of the things that we need to plan for, as you know, as a cost that, and our engineer has indicated that every 5 years it should have an engineering inspection on it, just to ensure that everything's good on the bridges. But I'm cognizant of our time, and I would like to just provide the opportunity for any questions from council, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Thank you. Colleagues, questions? Councillor Bullock.
Morning. What do you think your average use is per year? Like, how many people do you get on the trails?
You know, we actually don't have any trail counters on the trail. This has been raised in the steering committee, that it's the kind of thing that would support, you know, even things, for instance, like our grant applications and that kind of thing. It's good to know usage, but we do know that it has been increasing, and we are hearing more and more from people who are traveling long distance along the trail. You know, they're traveling all the way from Edmonton and other areas along the trail. And we're seeing that reporting on social media about their experiences along the way. We know there's people that are traveling across Canada that are using the trail. One of our projects that again needs to be completed this summer is to contract someone to go out and do, we want to do a proper GPS of the trail. We want to record the locations of all the signs. We want to ensure that the trail is properly signed all the way from both directions, so that people who don't know the area are actually able to find their way along the trail and know that they're in the right place and that kind of thing. So I think that we've been discussing at the steering committee the possibility and where, you know, a trail counters could potentially be located, but there are none at present along the trail.
Camille, I don't know, but when you go through Athabasca now, the parking lot where there's, like, especially in the summertime, there's always people parked there. There might not be a lot of people at once on the trail, but I do know, like, I've met people on the trail, and how far are you going? And they're going to a place called the Bailey Bridge on that trail. And it's exactly 7 kilometers from the parking lot to the Bailey Bridge. They turn around and they said, it's just a marker for us. We know that takes us X amount of time to go there and come back. And people are walking their dogs on it. Like, we were out on it in the fall, and we went up with other people on it. It's used more than we realize, and not all the way necessarily into Collington, but I do know we've had an incident with people walking all the way from Athabasca to Collington, and there were some dog issues at the one spot where they were attacked by dogs. So they're walking from Athabasca to maybe they go into the bar and have a beer there and walk all the way back. I don't know. I'm not going to ask them. But I mean, that would be a good, I think that'd be a good idea. But they are actually doing it, like people that are doing that, but they actually are quite often. If you drive by the parking lot, there's somebody parked there close to where you walk into it, and there are people on the trail. I don't think there's many skiers on the trail because it's not tracked, right? Most cross-country skiers like to go on a track, but so we're not going to do that either.
They also like snow.
But it is being used more and more all the time, must admit.
And it is also being used in the winter months. We know there's cross-country skiers and snowshoers out using the trail. And I wanted to just make a comment, we get pressure from time to time about why doesn't this trail allow ATVs on it? Many of our people who live in this area use ATVs, but because this is Trans-Canada Trail, and Trans-Canada Trail does not allow and will not fund trails that allow ATVs on it. Obviously we've gotten a great deal of money from Trans-Canada Trail for some of these projects over the years. And at the time when we first started out and we're doing the master plan for the trail, we did a number of community meetings all the way along the trail to gather public information on the types of use they would support on the trail. And across the board, the response was non-motorized. So again, that just supported the realities of, being part of the Trans-Canada Trail, quite frankly. And I think one of the, there's other challenges obviously around motorized use, for instance, there's no ATV club in this area is my understanding at the moment and that kind of thing. But I did just want to make a comment about some of the background with regards to it being a non-motorized trail.
To follow up on that then, the Peace River Trail, which is north of the river, is that not part of the Trans-Canada Trail? And does that, I thought ATVs were permitted on that one.
They are permitted on it, and there are 3 grandfather trails in Alberta where ATVs are allowed, and it's because when Trans-Canada Trail first started, it allowed ATVs, its policy allowed, but their funding is coming from the federal parks department. And so you can see where part of that impetus is coming from with regards to, a bias against motorized. But at any rate, so the Peace River Trail, the Iron Horse Trail, and the Grouard Peace River Trail, which is a continuation of the Peace River Trail towards Grouard, those trails, and actually I'm going to back off. The Grouard Peace River Trail is a non-motorized trail, but the North Shore Trail is also a motorized trail. And so those three trails are exceptions to when they changed their policy, let me put it that way.
Okay, that makes sense. Councilor Walt, you had your hand up.
And just on the grant funding, generally, does the steering committee take care of all the applications for grants for the committees and whatnot?
We do most of them. Alberta TrailNet staff do most of them. They're brought forward to the steering committee. We discuss them. And obviously when we identify a project going forward, a part of that discussion is, okay, where and what kinds of grant funding are we going to go after, quite frankly. So, but in terms of actual filling out the forms, we'll pull in information from our council members in terms of the areas. And we're obviously out there doing inspections and that kind of thing of our proposed areas. And gathering, just basic information that we need to even put together an application. But the funding application has gone in typically from TrailNet's office for many of these projects, and the funds come back to us, and we're managing the funds, paying, contracting the work, overseeing the consultants and contractors and paying them and that kind of thing, and responsible for reporting back to the funding entity in terms of the spending of their funds that they've provided.
Can I just remark on for our group, our funding strictly comes from grants. But no, I shouldn't say that. Our funding comes from casinos. Our membership fees are minimal, so we're not going to count that as it. So we work casinos. And then we can apply for a grant, let's say through CFEP, and they're always a matching grant. Trans-Canada Trail will only, even if we asked for a grant for Trans-Canada Trail, will only fund, let's say for maintenance, and they want something quite specific to only a third of a project or whatever. Like they just came out with something that up to $75,000, Trans-Canada Trail for projects up to $75,000. The most they would put into that is 15. So as a trail maintenance provider, we have to come up with the rest of the money. So we work casinos and we get that about every year and a half, every 16 months. So and we try to save up as much as we can from that to apply for the small funding stream from the CFEP grants, because that's up to 125,000. So I try to save 60,000. I've just applied for one January 15th. We have $71,000 in our bank. We have 60,000. We're hoping we'll get a matching grant of 60,000, and we have a casino at the end of this month. And so that's, our funding is totally different for the maintenance on the trails. Yeah, that doesn't come from here. Yeah.
Councillor Holland.
Thank you. And just to follow up as well, through the steering committee, we're also encouraged, all councillors are encouraged to go back to their municipalities as well and apply, for example, the Trails Care Grant is a perfect one, is an opportunity, because each section of the trail, depending on where you are able to apply for those particular grants as well. So it's also a municipal responsibility that's encouraged for as many of those types of grants that we can take advantage of.
One of the key values of the municipal involvement on the Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee is that collectively, through all of our organizations that are involved, we actually have quite a powerful voice when the municipal voices are added in terms of applying for grants from the provincial and federal governments. So it's like a very important tool, quite frankly, that we have the ability to bring to getting support, awareness of, and support for the fact that this is a regional initiative and one that's important to more than just one entity.
I'm looking for any other questions, or Councillor Minns.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this forward. Regarding the motorized use on the trail, especially between Athabasca and Collington, let's say, is it getting better? People not using it, or people trying to get down to the trail more often with quads and dirt bikes and all this stuff?
I'm actually not totally sure, but we haven't seen the same traffic with them, because they can't come into Athabasca anymore. Do you know what I mean? They can't go as far as they used to, like they used to come into town. So that has stopped some of that, but there are private properties all around the trail, right? That they can use their quads and they'll go onto the trail to go to the next part or whatever. So, but I don't think it is as strong as it once was. We haven't heard the complaints that we once did. So I think we've had gates up and locks on them to cut them off, but I think it's slowly, that's a nuisance after a while. Like we don't all, but and we, so we order 12 locks every year sort of thing or whatever. And so we are slowing it down. We're not going to say that it's going to stop entirely. But it has slowed down considerably. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chelmsford.
Just for my own clarity, so all the upcoming signage, kiosks, engineering would come from the 32,225 from the 5,000 annual contribution to the ALT municipal grant fund, correct?
Yeah, the sign, well, I'm just going to, most of our kiosks that are currently up and the signs that are in them have been paid for from the Alberta Historic Resources, because of the Athabasca Landing Trail being a provincial historic site. They have been providing grants, and I would say the grants are sort of in the range of $8,000 or $9,000. And those grants cover the cost of our consultant who develops, researches and develops the historic text and other text for the signs for construction of the kiosks and the kiosk roofs and for installation of them. So that's what has been paying for them. We're now entering, I think, a stage where we're having to replace signs because over time they do fade and sometimes get shot up and things like that. So our cost to replace those signs will come from the Athabasca Landing Trail Steering Committee Fund.
Counselor Holland.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to commend the work that has been done on this trail to date. It is unbelievable how much has been accomplished and how much work that has been done. So thank you all very much for doing that, and the volunteerism, as well as for Alberta TrailNet's time and efforts and the project planning and the design. And there is still so much left to do. It's far from over, far from fully developed. There's still so many different sections that need to be developed. But what we have right now is absolutely still very amazing. And a lot of people comment on it. I'm really excited actually, and wanted to mention 150 years this trail will be in 2026. And so this is something I think that we all really need to look at. It will draw attention, not only locally, but nationally, but internationally, as we've seen on the trail. So I think it's something that we really need to consider and look at and promote, as far as I'm concerned. Personally, I think it's super exciting also to mention, was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, there was a YouTube video that came out on the Fort Saskatchewan, the underslung pedestrian bridge that goes across the North Saskatchewan. And that really is the heart of the Trans-Canada Trail, as they mentioned, because three major trails go there. And one of them is the Athabasca Landing Trail. So to have that connectivity now, to be able to go walk literally from Athabasca all the way to Fort Saskatchewan, to me is an amazing feat and something that we should all celebrate. It's huge. So if you get a chance to look at that video, it is on YouTube. It is absolutely amazing. It was a $5.5 million project that was provincial, federal, and municipal as well, that looked into that. So the connectivity that's happening, the development that's happening, I think is super exciting. And I want to thank you again all for all the work that you've done towards this. And I look forward to continuing the work as well. I think it's very important and well worth our time and energy, and it's a huge asset to have. So thank you again.
Thanks, Tracy. I would like to just mention, it's one of those things that if you build it, they will come. And there's growing public awareness and things like the Fort Saskatchewan Bridge, you know, the historic signage that's up along the trail. These things are attracting attention, right? And so as people become more aware of it, you've got a couple of very large population centers sitting just to the south of you, and traffic on this trail will only increase as people become more aware of the opportunities to go.
I would just like to mention one more thing. I'm sorry I interrupted. When we first finished the trail from Collington to, that one stretch of trail, to like the McQuaig land, let's say, we had an opening of that trail, and TrailNet has on their site and that different things. And we had an opening for it. We had a luncheon at the Collington Community Center. I mean, we had some wagoneers that came up with their wagons and they transported people. And some of the people, because they went on the website and saw it, and they said, well, what can we do today? And they came up from Edmonton. There was 2 families that came up from Edmonton, went on the wagon ride, then went and had a luncheon with us, and we chatted away with them. They said, yeah, what can we do today? And they did see it. So it is out there for more and more people to see all the time.
And with regards to the users on the trail, I'm seeing it all the time. Whenever we go down, whenever we spend time on it, there's always someone else there, and they're always so appreciative of the work that's been done and the work that's happening now to bring it up to date and to maintain it and update the signs and all of those things. We're hearing it all the time. We're also seeing as well several times last summer where there were people bicycling from Edmonton all the way through. And so more and more people are enjoying this trail, and they're finding that they have all of these open areas and these open sections of the trail that it's driving more and more interest. It's spreading out. And I think that's just absolutely amazing. So thanks again.
Questions? All the questions have been on my left. Questions there?
Okay, well, I'll just make a statement. I'm sure yourselves have noticed, but myself, an uptake in I want to use the word advertising of the Canada Trail in general after Melanie Vogel's amazing 4-year experience. And I did get the pleasure of meeting and briefly hosting her here in Athabasca along with my friend Sherry. And I remember you came and met her as a trail coordinator to get her equipment to, I think it was to Slave Lake or Smith at that time. But COVID had put her off for about a year and a half stuck. And we followed her daily online, and still now I see, people talk about even the journey from Edmonton to Athabasca, or, it's like to kind of try to do something that she did. So I see that being in the future, something that can be really, I don't want to say played upon, but appreciated and used in marketing, basically. Yeah. And Milo.
Well, thank you for your support of her, because I think she really appreciated it.
Councillor Skrillex or Cromwell? No. To me, it seems like trails are really a huge opportunity for, increased tourism in the region and the well-being and enjoyment of the people that live here. And I know that there are both groups, as you've said, that make use of them. And so I think it's important to recognize what a valuable resource they are in the region, and it seems like a lot of work has been done by a really small group of committed people, and I appreciate the commitment of your teams, and I think our council does as well. I don't know if there are any other questions from council, but I do appreciate you coming today. This council will discuss this again at a future meeting, and so in terms of the main couple of the big takeaways, you said the asks from the committee are the continued support and involvement in the steering committee itself, and the continued financial support that you see out of the county.
Yes, and if I may, Paul, I'd like to also request, we as we go forward on some of these projects, we know we're going to be attempting to see if we can't get some easements in place where we're having to cross private lands. And I would also request if county would discuss whether if we're successful in those, the county would consider holding the easements since it's not really, it's outside of TrailNet's really area of responsibility where we want to undertake easements within, other land bases and that kind of thing. I will just say we already own a whole bunch of abandoned rail lines in this province, and that's more work than anybody needs, quite frankly.
I forgot to ask the one question that I did have, and that's, you've said on the Minnook to the Perryvale to Minnook portion, you've got funding for design, but it needs to be matching funding. So you've got the grant. Is there the matching funding in place too?
We got a grant, a federal active transportation grant for $50,000. I haven't put out any RFPs yet, so I haven't got any quotes in terms of what it's going to cost. We currently have identified that grant required, and I think it was $15,000 of matching funds, which at the moment TrailNet has put in of its own funding. Okay. We may turn around and go after TransCanada Trail for some matching funding. We haven't really looked at that yet, but.
Okay, so it's not
Yeah.
dollar for dollar. It's just, I was reading that on your. Thank you. Councillor Skrillex, you got a question, please?
Yeah. Like from Minnook to Perryville, is there an identified route or is it the old landing trail or is it down the highway or down the railroad right away or?
It's actually a combination of on the old historic trail. Portion of the historic trail is it's registered, it's an easement actually registered on title and held by the province, specifically by Alberta Parks. So that's the section that we're most focused on in terms of the planning design work. We've been out there and we know it needs a bunch of culverts and some improvements just to manage wet areas and that kind of thing. But it's actually just an absolutely beautiful natural trail that is being maintained by a number of the adjacent landowners at present. But there's sections that are on road, and we also want to look at maybe some opportunities to move for possibilities to move certain portions of that off-road if those exist.
Okay, good, thanks.
Councillor Hall.
Just if I may add to that, I thought it was really cool because I was looking into more and more about the alignment and how it all worked. And the section that's going through the wilderness, as we'll put it, through that private land, it actually leads you to the road plan 1909T, which is the old landing trail survey that you can pull up online, which is from 1897. It is the neatest thing ever, and I'm a kind of freak when it comes to the history, but it's the exact same section, and we'll see it on we'll see it upcoming, I would imagine, on some upcoming maps. But yeah, it is really cool to see that it dates back and is being still held under that road plan.
You can see that you've got a passionate council member here.
Council, last call for comments, questions. Thank you all for making the time to come and speak to us. I know it takes a lot to organize and to be here and talk, and I think we've all speaking for myself at least, I feel better informed, and I'm glad you took the time to come out and share part of your morning with us.
Well, thank you very much for your time today and your questions.
Thank you.
I'm only been over by 20 minutes. Not quite. 50.
I think we should recess for lunch, and we'll determine the coming back time after. It's 20 minutes after 12. We have 3 items left, 4.4 and closed session. I think I spoke to the CAO and he thinks we've got time to address the 2 closed session items. So would we, in order to take a motion to enter closed session, Councillor Cromwell has moved. On the question of the adoption of the motion to go closed session, all those in favor? The motion opposed, and the motion is adopted, and that's at 12:21. And we're live. Councilor Cromwell, you have a motion?
I make a motion to direct administration to contact Aspen View Public School Division and request they make the complaint dated February 12, 2024, an official code of conduct complaint, so it may be investigated.
Can you read it slower so that I can make a note to repeat it, please?
Motion to direct administration to contact Aspen View Public School Division and request that they make the complaint dated February 12, 2024, an official code of conduct complaint so that it may be investigated.
Councilor Cromwell has made a motion to direct administration to contact Aspen View Public Schools to request that they make the February 12th, 2024 complaint an official code of conduct complaint so that it may be investigated. Discussion. Councilor Holland, the floor is yours.
Is it possible to put an amendment there for Aspen View to also identify the parties?
It's necessary in order for it to be a complaint.
Well, we should probably specify that because our
make
motions seem to be lacking in a
Complaint,
few
an
areas.
official code, so it may be investigated and to identify the parties. Is that what you'd like? Okay, discussion on the amendment or the motion. We'll vote on the amendment first, but Councillor Gerlach, the floor is yours. Put your mic on, please.
That we give them the opportunity to, not that we're asking them to request. Can you read that again, Gary?
Leah, could you read Ms. Blair, could you read the motion the way it's recorded, please? What I had written was to direct administration to contact Aspen View Public Schools and request that they make the 12th of February, 2024 complaint an official code of conduct complaint so that it may be investigated, with the amendment adding the words "and to identify the parties involved."
And all we're doing by that motion is requesting, and if they choose not to, then
Okay, you've spoke to the motion, Councillor Gerlach, you have the floor still.
No, I'm good for now.
Councillor Chamzik, the floor is yours.
Would it suffice you, Councillor Gerlach, to put the option of in there instead?
Sure, put your mic on, please.
When you're requesting them to put in a code of conduct, you're requesting that they do something. And I think we should be giving them the opportunity that if they want to have it investigated, that they should think about, that they should have that option as to whether or not they want to. Probably not explaining this well. But we shouldn't be asking them to requesting them or directing them to do that. They've been reluctant to do it to this point. But if they do think that it's worthy of being investigated, that they should put in a formal code of conduct complaint. Otherwise. But. I don't know. I'm not. Like, I just feel nauseous when I think about this and how we've dealt with things in the past and how we swept things under the carpet. It all depends who it is and whatever. We don't deal with things in a fair, straight on manner. And I'm just really frustrated with it. We got to start acting responsible, ethical, and we're just not doing it.
can I ask a point of clarification from the CAO?
Please.
Did that letter get sent to them that we talked about at the last council meeting yet?
Yes.
Councillor Anderson, your hand is up.
Thank you. We've had former code of conduct complaints that council deemed weren't a qualified complaint or didn't meet the requirements, and that they wouldn't be investigated. And I just cannot believe that we are now saying something doesn't meet the requirements of a formal complaint, and we're going to request that somebody formalize that complaint. I just don't see that as being a reasonable path forward.
Counselor Holland, you've had the floor, so we'll wait till everybody else has had a chance. Is there anybody else that wants to speak? I mean, honestly, the code of conduct has a lot of stuff in it, and you know, it states that members have a right to express opinions that as long as they're sure they're not perceived as representing the county. And we don't know anything about this. In the absence of a formal complaint, there is nothing properly before council. Council has, in my view, undertaken a code of conduct investigation outside the procedures aligned in the bylaw. And I think that it's time we focused on our strategic planning and the priorities of the residents in the region that the residents sent us here to this table to work on. Because I can tell you that, you know, this is wildly different than how we've handled other issues in the past. And this continued, I don't know what you call it, squabbling and disruptive behavior is certainly not why I sought my seat. We've dispensed with items that had far more detail with named individuals and named events, and we've just dispensed with them. And now the fact that we're soliciting a complaint, I can't, that we're enclosed. And the fact that we're, you know, ignoring the advice of the investigator and soliciting complaints, to me, is beyond reasonable, but that's where we want to go. I will be voting opposed. Is there anybody else that hasn't spoken that wishes to speak? Councilor Minns?
I guess on this whole thing is we had a letter, received a letter regarding this complaint, and without any name being in it and stuff like that, we jumped ahead and we've gotten some information regarding if it can be investigated or not, and it can't be, and so we're done. It's pretty well straightforward. I don't know, unless something else comes in. So let's move on. We're done. It's, and I want to really, you know, I don't know if I should say this or not, but I'm going to. I really want to thank Aspen View for this. Thank you very much.
We have an amendment on the table and a motion. Are you ready for the question on the amendment? Everybody's been around once. Council, is there any objection to going around a second time on this issue? Councillor Wallach has objected. Our rules are one cycle to keep things orderly and processed. I would then request a vote of council. If you would like to suspend the rules, I guess, to cycle bound a second time. Councillor Cromwell, you were in the session. Was the idea that that's a 2/3 vote when we do that?
Sorry, say that again.
So the rules are to one cycle. When we did that meetings presentation, when you suspend the rules, I think he said seek a 2/3 vote, and very much in the way you do anything else that's. Councillor Holland, you were in
I
there.
thought it was 50% plus one for that.
That would be 2/3 here.
Same.
Because I think.
Are you able to pull the procedural bylaw not
Procedural-
section that says it's 2/3, or is it?
Well, suspending the rules is not in the procedural bylaw that I
Right.
can remember.
So then that would be a majority vote as far as Robert's rules, I believe, are concerned.
Well, Councillor Gerlich. So you want to address that question, or you want to go around again?
No, I want to ask a question of the CAO. So what you're saying is without a formal complaint code of conduct, this will not proceed. Or that was,
Mr. Chairman, I can't comment on that.
but that was the effect of the motion, that if there is not a formal complaint coming forward. So is there still an opportunity to put forward a code of conduct complaint?
Whether it's the current item or any other item, there's always an opportunity for someone to submit a code of conduct complaint.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a desire to go around a second time and suspend the rules? Those in favor of cycling a second round of conversation, say aye or raise your hand. Okay, those opposed? Councilor Gerlach, how do you vote? Okay, the motion is defeated on the question of the adoption. of the
Recorded
am-
vote, please.
On the question of Councillor Cromwell's asked for a recorded vote. On the question of the adoption of the amendment, to add the words "and to identify the parties involved," all those in favor? Opposed? Motion, the amendment is defeated. On the question of the adoption of the main motion, to direct administration to contact Aspen View Public Schools and request that they make the 12th of February 2024 complaint an official code of conduct complaint so that it may be investigated. All those in favor? And opposed? And the motion is defeated. Can we take a 15-minute recess to come back at 5 minutes to 1? And to enter, we'll do that when we get back. We'll take a 15-minute recess. Is 5 minutes to 1. I think we said we were coming back about this time. Jordan, are you? It's all good to go? Okay, so we are at item number, agenda 4. We're at agenda item 4.4. Our normal, thank you both for joining us. We have Dr. Alex Clark and Dr. Catherine Swindlehurst here from Athabasca University. Dr. Clark is the president and Dr. Swindlehurst is the chief growth officer. There is a presentation for closed, but we might as well do the introductions briefly, and then we'll take a motion to go into closed session and carry on. On your right, my left, we have CEO Bob Beck, Recording Secretary Ms. Blair, Communications Coordinator Mr. Schenkelberg, Councilor Mintz.
Rob Mins, Division 8, Baptiste Lake Island Lake area.
Hi there, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm Tracy Holland, Division 5, which is east of Athabasca, Amber Valley, Paxton, Parkview areas.
Kelly Chamzik, Division 7, Grassland, Atmore, Crossvita.
Hello, Camille Wallach, Division 9, north of the river.
It's good to see you again.
Good afternoon, Ashton Anderson, Division 3, which is the Boyle area.
Good afternoon, Natasha Kaptanik, elected in Division 2, Collington, Minnook, and New Pine Creek.
Good afternoon, Joe Gerlach, Rochester Prairieville area, gateway to the county of Athabasca.
And good afternoon, Gary Cromwell, far north, Wanda River, Breakneck, Blue Jay area. Thank you for being here.
So you could say the gateway out of the county of Athabasca. It would be in order to take a motion to enter into closed session. Councillor Mins has moved. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none on the question of the adoption of the motion to enter closed session, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, the count is 9-0 and the motion is adopted. Counselor Anderson,
I move that council supports Athabasca University's campus revitalization proposal.
Counselor Anderson has made a motion to confirm Athabasca County's county or council? Athabasca County's support of Athabasca University's campus revitalization proposal. Discussion. Seeing none on the question of the adoption of the motion to confirm Athabasca County's support of AU's campus revitalization proposal, all those in favor? Opposed? The count is 9-0 and the motion is adopted. There is no further business on our agenda, and as a result, I will declare the meeting adjourned.